Big Joe Egan is a tough Irish fighter out of Dublin, Ireland. Very, very close with Mike Tyson, knows Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Had a pretty amazing career. He's been up and down, always seems to overcome adversity. He's got a heart as big as the frame that he carries around with him. So I want you to enjoy this sit down with Big Joe Egan. Hey everyone, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody's doing well. And today I've sat down with many people in my life, in my former life and certainly now what we're doing here with these videos. But Big Joe Egan is a guy I really enjoyed. Very, very close with Mike Tyson, knew every big name in the fight game, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Leonard. And he's got an incredible story. It's a comeback story. And I can tell you, Joe's got a heart as big as the frame that he carries around with him, and it is big. And you're going to really enjoy this, not only for the fighting enthusiasts out there that want to hear a lot about Mike Tyson and about him getting in the ring with him and him just knowing Mike, not knowing Mike only as a fighter, but knowing him as a person and the nice things that he has to say about him. But just his own life experiences. I mean, this guy has overcome adversity in so many ways, and I learned something through this sit down. You can never learn enough in life, as old as I am, 70 years old I'm going to be this year. I sit down with people and they may say one word or one sentence that just really enlightens you, and that's what happened with me with Joe. Really enjoyed this one, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So let's sit down with Big Joe Egan. Joe, let me tell you, it's an honor and a privilege to sit with you. I'll tell you how this came about. I was having dinner with Mike Tyson and Tom Patty, who, by the way, sends his warmest regards. Tom, I spoke to him just a couple of days ago, told him we were going to be sitting down. And Mike and I were talking, and, I said to him, I was asking Mike about UFC fighters and all of that. And I said, Mike, did you ever get into the UFC? Do you like that? And he made me laugh. He said, Michael, he said, if two termites were on the table fighting each other, he said, I'm interested in it. Anything that's fighting, he says, I'm interested in it. So he made me laugh. But we started talking about fighters, and, I said to him, well, who is the toughest guy you ever fought against? And immediately he said, the toughest white guy on the planet, was you, Joe, Big Joe Egan. And it came out right away. He didn't even hesitate. He said it right away. And I said, really, tell me about it, because I'd heard about you, but I didn't know too much about you, and he was, so he went on and on, told me about your sparring days and, with Cuss and all of that, which I want you to get into a little bit. But I want to tell you how this goes, I'm not really interviewing you. This is called a sit down. And, in my old life, this is what we used to do. We used to sit down and discuss anything, whether it be a business deal, some kind of negotiation, life or death, whatever it might have been. So if you have any questions for me or anything you want to ask me, that's fine too. It's more of a discussion than an interview. But one of the things that I really do want to get into after we talk a little bit about Mike, you got a great story of coming back, Joe, through adversity in your life. And a lot of my viewers like to hear that, because I came out of a rough situation, been very blessed in my life to be where I am now. And I think we can say the same about you. So I want to get into that a little bit. But, tell me about Mike, about your days with Mike.
I'll tell you, it's the most beautiful compliment from a man like Mike Tyson. But that particular compliment, Big Joe Egan, the toughest white man on the planet, was a strange day, Michael. We were sparring this particular day, and there was 4 white sparring partners, which was unusual because normally there would be some black guys. But this particular day, there was 4 white sparring partners, and Mike knocked 3 of them out. I was number 4. I got battered from pillar to post, but I never got put down. And at the end of the sparring session, Mike Tyson went, Joe Egan is the toughest white man on the planet. Far, far from it, Michael. But I was the toughest white man in the gym that day.
Right.
And it was an ultimate compliment from a man like Mike Tyson. Because, Michael, if you're going to get battered, you might as well get battered by the best. I got battered by the best of my era. Mike Tyson battered me, made me cry many times. But what it done in my mind, because in boxing is a lot of psychological warfare. Sometimes men are beat before the first bell. And I've seen a lot of fighters beat at the weigh-in. I've seen a lot of fighters beat at the press conference before the first punch is thrown, because their opponents or their opposition could get into their mind. But subconsciously, I believe that if I could take Mike Tyson's punishment, I could take anybody's punishment. And even when they matched me to box Lennox Lewis, he was knocking everybody out. And he was picked to box for the Canadian All-Stars against the American All-Stars, the New York All-Stars. I was boxing in New York at the time. And he'd knocked out the American champion in a previous international, America versus Canada. So the American champion that he'd knocked out had knocked out the New York champion. So the New York champion had actually pulled out of the fight. So they said, we've nobody to fight Lennox Lewis. Frankie Lyles was the star of the New York team. He went on to win the World Super Middleweight title. And Lennox Lewis was the star of the Canadian team. So they were stuck for somebody to fight Lennox. So I said, I'll fight Lennox. They said, Joe, the man that beat you got knocked out by the man that got knocked out by Lennox. By Lennox. And I said, yeah, but the man that beat me didn't knock me out. I said, I've been taking Mike Tyson's punishment. This was 1985. I can take Lennox Lewis's punishment. So psychologically, I believed in my heart of hearts and the madness in my brain that I could take Lennox's punishment, because I was taking Mike Tyson's punishment. And I did. I got in and I got battered by Lennox Lewis, but I stayed on my feet. I got beat on points by Lennox. But it was a great honour to share the ring with the two greatest heavyweights of my era, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, because every fighter, Michael, that climbs into the ring dreams about becoming a champion of the world. I wasn't good enough to become a champion of the world. But if you're going to box with world champions and be able to boast that you stayed on your feet, and yeah, I do boast, because it was a great achievement for me to stay on my feet with the two greatest punchers and two greatest heavyweights of my era and to share the ring with them. And still to this day, like, me and Mike have a friendship that will stand the test of time. He's been over to visit my mum in Ireland, and my mum used to speak to him on the phone, and I'm very, very proud to say he's my friend.
Well, I tell you, he feels the same way. He spoke very highly of you. He really did. And I got to ask you this too, and that is a great privilege and an honor to be in the ring with two of the greatest heavyweight champions of our era, no doubt about it. And I got to ask you, Mike's, punching power is legendary. How did you feel the first time he hit you?
Well, I always joke with people. I say, Michael, I said, if Mike Tyson missed you with a punch, you'd get pneumonia from the draft. The power of but I'll tell you how we came about to actually box together. I boxed on the Irish team, and I boxed in Atlantic City. 1983, I think it was 83. And I boxed the American champion. I was 17 years of age. And the American Marine, big Marine, powerhouse of fighter, he was too strong for me. I hadn't got that mature man strength. I was big for my age, but I was still only 17. I'd left school when I was 14 years of age. I was on the doors of nightclubs when I was 15. I was big, but I hadn't got that mature man strength. But I was courageous and brave, like all fighters. You walk to the ring to box, you're a brave person, whether it be a man or a woman. You're a brave person. You play football, you play basketball, you play darts, you play tennis, you play golf. You don't play boxing. It's a fight. And the modern day gladiators, years ago, they would enter the arena with a spear and a sword. Now they enter with gloves and they fight. Whatever the sport is, it's a combative sport. They've got them in the cage now. They've got them, I admire all fighters. But I got beat up by this big American, and Floyd Patterson was in attendance. And whatever I showed in that fight impressed Floyd Patterson. I didn't have great skills, but I was courageous and had a good chin. And a fighter called Paul Fitzgerald from Arklow, the featherweight, he impressed Floyd Patterson, who was married to an Irish lady who took a great interest in the Irish team. He was one of Custom Otto's world champions, along with Jose Torres and along with Mike. They were the three world champions that Custer trained. He trained a lot of other fighters as well. But Floyd gave us the opportunity to stay on in America. He said to Paul Fitzgerald, the featherweight, you impressed me in winning. And he said to me, he said, you've got a lot of heart and you've got a lot of courage. We can improve your skills. We can't improve your courage. You're either born with courage. He said, oh, you haven't got courage. He said, you can't give a person courage. And he said, we can work on your skills. Would you like to stay on in America? I said, yeah, I wouldn't have had the money to come back to America. So I remember phoning my mum. I said, Mum, I'm going to stay in America. Floyd Patterson has given me the opportunity to stay in America. Oh, she said, son, you'll never come home. I said, I'll be home next year. I went to Gleason's gym. I sparred with a couple of pro heavyweights in Gleason's gym. Al Gavin and Bob Jackson, who bought the original gym off Cuss. They were Mike's friends and they were Cuss's friends. They took an interest in me in Gleason's gym. I sparred Art Tucker. I can't remember the other heavyweight's name. two good heavyweights. And I gave a good account of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Alan and Mike said to me, they said, and Bob, sorry, Alan and Bob said to me, there's a young heavyweight in the Catskills called Mike Tyson. And they said he's looking for sparring partners. He's 17. I was just so happy to hear that I was going to be boxing with a man my own age, because I'd been so used to fighting older men. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So we went to the Catskills. I met Cuss and Camille and Marnie and Tom and Jay, and it was the warmest of most beautiful welcomes I've had anywhere in the world. You could just feel the warmth with these people. Then I met Mike, and I thought, wow, he's younger than me, and he's smaller than me. And I thought, I'm going to get the better of him, because I was big. I was 6, 7 months older. But what I didn't realise was Mike was knocking men out left, right and centre. I'd never heard of Mike coming from Ireland. Mike was making big waves in America, knocking powerhouses out. Anyway, we got on great. We spoke about the history of Irish boxing. He was fascinated with the relationship Barry McGuigan had with Mr. Eastwood. It was like a father-son relationship. He was a famous Irish world featherweight champion. And Mike had that same relationship with Cuss, a father-son relationship. We spoke about the history of Irish boxing, and we got on really, really well. And I thought, this guy's a nice guy. I was actually starting to feel sorry for him, because I'm going to beat you up in sparring. But it was just the madness in me. I didn't realise how brilliant he actually was. I didn't know who he was. We spent the whole evening talking about boxing. We went to his room at the top of the house. He had access to the biggest collection of fight footage on the planet through Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton. And Mike had cine reels of fights that I never even knew existed. Right. He had a collection, like I said, the biggest access to the biggest in the world. So we became great friends overnight. The next morning we went for a run, jogged for about half a mile. He took off like a gazelle. He was an incredible runner, an incredible athlete. And I thought, that's right, you take it to just running and burn yourself out, because I'm saving my energy for the sparring later on. Mm-hmm. Anyway, back to the house, bit of breakfast, lay down for a couple of hours, got ready to go sparring. So we're in the minibus now. These big, powerful men all appeared. I had met them the day before, and they were all very, very somber, like they were sort of walking like men in the chain gang, like going to the gallows. But what they knew, what was coming, I didn't know what was coming. They knew that Mike was going to beat them up later on that day. I didn't know this. I really was confident that I'm bigger than you, I'm older than you. And I was so relaxed on the minibus. These other guys, big men sitting on the minibus like this, very somber. Got to the gym, above the police station, the Catskills, I'm nice and relaxed. Shadow boxing, warming up, bandaged up. Cuss said, okay, come on, we glove up, now we're going to spar. I look in the ring. Mike was pacing the ring, and he had his shirt off. And 17 years of age, a physique like I've never seen on a 17-year-old in my life. Then or since, his physique, his neck, his biceps, his chest, his back, his body was incredible. The shape, the muscle definition that he had.
Well, I gotta tell you this, Joe. I remember, because I'm into fighting a lot. I loved it since I was a kid. My dad was big. My dad was an amateur fighter, actually. So I mean, I've been interested in the fights. I actually was involved with Vito Antifermo for a while. He was a fighter that I had. And I agree. When I saw Mike the first time, I said, my God, this guy is built like Adonis, like a brick wall.
People didn't know the athleticism in the man. People just gave him credit for a power of punch. His speed was phenomenal. His athleticism, his training ability. He was a brilliant athlete. And imagine what he could have done in American football. Imagine what he could have done in anything. Because when you've got that, and you can put your mind, you had a great mind as well. Anyway, Cuss pointed to the first sparring partner, Michael, and this big powerhouse got in, and Mike knocked him out with the first punch. And I do tell people, I ruined a good pair of underpants at that split second. Because so I thought that no, the 17-year-old boy should have this power. Anyway, he knocked out a couple more. I was number 4. I got in. I'd done 3 minutes with him that day. Got out, a couple more, got in, I'd done another 3 minutes. So I stood with the 6 minutes. But the madness in me, I thought, I'll get the better of you one day. I never did. But it was an honour to share the ring with him. I stayed on for him a long time in the Catskills, sparred with him on many, many occasions. And I learned so much from sparring with Mike and listening to the tutelage of course, and Tom and Jay. It was probably some of the best times of my life even though I was getting beaten to a pulp, it was probably some of the best times of my life. And very proud to say that Mike, Tom, Jay are still my friends to this day. I class them as, I have an affection for them. You know, I love them dearly. And people say, how can you love it? It was headlines actually in the Bulgarian newspapers when I went to Bulgaria. Headlines in the newspaper. How can you love a man that beats you to a pulp and makes you cry constantly? Right. Unless you understand the sport. You can't explain it. I do love the man dearly.
Let me ask you this. You know, this is really interesting. You get in the ring, you're good friends, you're sparring, and Mike knows he's going to hurt you. He knows he's going to hurt you with that punch, and you know you're going to get hurt. What do you think it was about? I mean, could Mike, knowing that you're a friend, he can still hit you and hurt you? Is that the mentality of a fighter, Joe?
What Cuss used to say, what Mike lacks in experience, he uses in aggression, and he throws punches with bad intentions. When the sparring, I've saw Mike knock men unconscious and then bend down and cradle them in his arms and bring them round and say to them, brother, you're okay, come on, you're okay, brother. And he would have an affection that after he'd finished hitting you, during the sparring session, he would have aggression. But once the sparring sessions were over, once he'd knocked out his opponent or the bell would ring, he had an affection for all fighters. He loves all fighters, right. You know, but it's a sport. It's nothing personal. And people that don't understand the sport question it. They say, how can somebody... I'll tell you an example, Michael. I boxed in the Irish Championships 1 year, separate to Mike Tyson. I won my way to the Irish final, and I was working the door on a nightclub, and the head doorman in the nightclub was called Cathal Ryan. And Cathal Ryan had won his way to the Irish final. I'd won my way to the Irish final. He was the head doorman where I worked. We were friends. But when the bell rang, it was a fight. And we battered each other in the fight, the Irish finals. We went to work afterwards on the nightclub, all busted up. People coming in going, must have been a bad fight tonight. We were after boxing each other. I was the best man at his wedding. There was a friendship. That's the great thing about boxing. There's a friendship and a camaraderie that you can't put into words. Boxing, Michael, first and foremost, gives you self-respect. Then it gives you respect for your opponent. And that's such an important word in life, having respect for yourself and respect for others. And that's the great thing about the sport. And Mike, along with all the fighters that I've met on the planet, where I've been all over the world boxing, have such a respect and a camaraderie for each other. And like I say, to me, it's the greatest sport in the world. Maybe I'm biased being an ex-fighter, but it's such an important part of life, having self-respect and respect for others.
No, I agree with you, Joe. And I got to tell you, you know, gentlemen like yourself and Mike, I have so much respect for Mike. You know, I kind of relate to him with two guys that came out of a rough situation, came out of Brooklyn. But the way Mike has just turned his life around. He's so honest. He's so transparent. It's a joy sitting down and talking to him. Whatever is in his head is on his lips. I mean, he's got no filter at times, but it's very refreshing because he tells the truth, you know. And it's just nice to see that he's come out of all of that, and that, you know, he's succeeding and he's really doing well with himself right now. It's a joy.
Story, Michael, that you'll appreciate and your listeners will appreciate. Mike spoke to my mum many, many times on the phone over the 22 years before he met her. Because he'd been speaking to her for 22 years and he hadn't met her at this stage. So this particular day, we're doing a tour. We're doing a Mike Tyson after doing a speaking tour. And Mike said, Joe, how's your mother doing? I said, she's not so good, Mike. I said, she had a lump removed from her neck and we're very concerned with cancer because she's a smoker. My Uncle Brian, my mum's brother, he died of cancer, God rest him. He'd never smoked in his life. And I said, we're very, very concerned about her with the lump on her neck, Mike. She's been had surgery. She's been released from the hospital because of the MRSA bug. She's now staying at her sister's house, being cared for by my auntie, my mum's sister. Mike said, we've got to go and see her mother, Joe. This after 22 years speaking to her on the phone, he insisted that we go and see. We stopped the tour. We jumped on a plane. Me, Mike, Scott Welch, who fought for the world heavyweight title. He fought Henry Akinwande on the Tyson Holyfield undercard. We've landed in Dublin Airport, picked up in Dublin Airport, brought straight to my auntie's house. There was chaos. There was unreal, the crowds, the paparazzi. But Mike wanted to see my mum because he was concerned about her after having the surgery, and he wanted me to be with him when he sees my mum. Anyway, we've gone into my auntie's front room, and this man who can break bones with punches embraced a fragile woman recovering from surgery in his arms. He embraced her. Me and Scott Welch were standing there, and he's hugging her in his arms. And he said, Miss Egan, he said, I'm going to tell you something now. He said, I remember on my 18th birthday. I was with Mike when he was 17. He said, I remember on my 18th birthday. He said, you sent over a shoebox with some potato chips in the shoebox, Irish potato crisps. Mm-hmm. He said, some money in an envelope. It would have been very little money, Michael. And some sweatshirts. There would have been second-hand sweatshirts for his 18th birthday. Now, this was 22 years previous. I don't know many people that can remember what they got for 22 years previous.
Wow.
Mike was standing there with my mum. Me and Scott Welch were there. And my mum said to Mike, you remember that, Mike? He said, yes, Mrs. Egan. He says, very few people have given me anything in my life. I choked up. Scott Welch choked up. Scott had to leave the room. My mum started crying. I started crying. Mike looked at me, excuse the language. He goes, Joe, motherfucker, you're always crying. He made me cry. But this man could have been a billionaire athlete.
Yeah.
Remembering 2 years previous, a couple of packets of crisps, some second-hand sweatshirts, and a little bit of money that my mother had sent over to him for his birthday. It just shows you, even with all his success and his achievements, I don't envy his introduction into this world. He had such a hard introduction into this world, Michael. Yes. And fighters come from hard times. Fighters come from humble beginnings. But I tell you what, there's not too many men on this planet that have had humbler beginnings or harder times than Mike Tyson. Growing up on the streets of Brownsville, he must have had it so hard, because where I came from in Ringsend in Dublin, I had tough times. I'm one of 7 children. I got 4 sisters and 2 brothers, so 7 kids in a working class family. We had hard times, but nothing compared to what Mike Tyson had. And even, like I said, with all his success, I don't envy his introduction into this world.
Well, it shows you what kind of heart he has. And see, we have another thing in common. I'm one of 7, and I got 2 brothers and 4 sisters also. So,
yeah, there you go.
What's the saying? But I got to ask you that. Yeah, he does have a great heart, as you do, Joe. Because I've read about you and I've looked up. You got a lot of. You both have a lot in common in that way. I got to ask you this, Customato. You obviously had a relationship with him back then, and we know the impact he had on Mike's life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Cus was a very, very special human being. If the world was full of more people like Customato, it would be a better world. He was such a caring, genuine man. And I'm speaking from me, but I also saw the way he looked after others, sparring partners that were brought in that got hurt and beat up by Mike. Cus looked after them. He made sure that they were okay. He cared for so many people. And what he did for boxing, he will be remembered, not just for Mike as well, but for what he done with Jose and Floyd.
Floyd Patterson, right?
He's such a great man, such a knowledgeable man, and his name will stand the test of time. He will be remembered in the boxing history annals of boxing. He will be remembered alongside Mike. Mike cemented in stone the youngest ever heavyweight champion of the world. He took it from Floyd, who Cus had trained as well, and he's just an amazing man. And it was a privilege. It was a privilege to be in the Catskills with Cus, with Mike, with Tom, with Jay, Camille and Marnie, and the Hilton brothers. There's lots of other people that I met when I was there. Because, like I said, it was some of the best times of my life. And memories I'll take to the grave, and to be able to still to this day, and for the rest of my life, to be able to say that Mike is my friend, I'm very proud to be able to say that. But to say I was there alongside Cus, because he was the man that made Mike. If any other mentor or trainer had got Mike, they might not have been able to do the same job that Cus did. Cus was a father figure. Cus protected Mike, and fighters need protection. People say, how do fighters need protection? They're the toughest people on the planet. They need to be protected from themselves and the pitfalls that come along with success, the entourage that come along with success. Because as soon as you're successful, there's pitfalls going to be put in your way, there's obstacles going to be put in your way, and there's an entourage that's going to jump on board because they want to be associated with champions. And sometimes They're not there for genuine reasons. They're just there because they want to have to ride alongside the champion. As soon as that champion loses his title, they'll jump on with another champion.
Right.
But Cus prepared Mike for life. And that's what he done with a lot of his fighters. He didn't just teach them how to protect themselves in the ring. He also taught them how to protect themselves outside of the ring, because he knew the boxing ring was safe for fighters because they knew what was coming at them. Mike Tyson was the safest he's ever been in a boxing ring. I was the safest in a boxing ring because there's only one man hitting you. Even if it is Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis, there's only one man hitting you. When I was outside of the ring, I've been shot twice. I've been stabbed many times. I've been attacked and hit with poles and batons by gangs. The boxing ring was safe. It's the strange world we live in, Michael, you know. But Cus would teach you to prepare for the obstacles in life, the pitfalls in life. And that's what he was. He was a great mentor, not just a great boxing coach. Tragically, he wasn't there to watch Mike win the world title. He watched from heaven because, please believe me, I believe in heaven. I pray all the time, right? And I know there's a God. You can call him Allah, call him Buddha, call him whatever you want. As long as you worship him in the right way, you respect yourself, respect others, and conduct yourself properly. And be a good ambassador for your family, for your country, for your religion. And that's what I believe that Cus would make. He would make sense of the things he would say. Because looking back, at the time I was young, you think, what's this all about? But looking back, I realise now that the teachings he gave wasn't just for the boxing ring, it was for life, you know, and he was an amazing human being. Tragically, he wasn't there for long enough for Mike's life.
So interesting what you just said, Joe. And I believe that, you know, Cus's passing had a big effect on Mike in a negative way, because I agree with you. Cus would have protected him, and Mike admits that himself. But, you know, what you said, and I've heard nothing but good things about Cus from everybody I know in the fight game that knew him. But what you said was just so interesting, that for a fighter, the safest place for a fighter is in the ring, because of everything they have to deal with in life outside of the ring. You know, all the accolades and all the stuff that goes along with it that can really mess you up in a way. Yes. But the safest place is in the ring. That's really, I've never heard that before, but you know what? I certainly understand it, really.
You train for that. You prepare for that. You prepare for your opponent attacking you in the way that you know he's going to attack you, because you have sparring partners to suit his style. So you're prepared for what comes at you. Outside of the ring, it's so hard to prepare for what comes to you. But Cus used to teach us things that would help us prepare for what's coming at us in life, because there's so many things that come at us that we're not prepared for. And I said it in my book. I'm not trying to promote my book. Mike launched my book in Canary Wharf.
Oh, that's fine.
Book. We never saw the best of Mike Tyson because Mike was 20 years of age. He hadn't even matured as a man. He hadn't even matured when Cus was took from us. And the thing is, Mike never really fulfilled his true potential. People say, Joe, how can you say that when he won the world title and then regained the world title? I said, we never saw the best of the man. I said, because imagine he was able to do that when Cus was took from him. Imagine what he would have been able to do. I said, he probably would have ruled the world. The Klitschko's ruled the world for 10 years. Mike could have ruled the world for as long as Cus was alive, because Cus would have kept him grounded, would have kept him wrapped in cotton wool outside of the boxing ring, and protected him from the pitfalls of life, from the entourage of shit that comes along sometimes when you're a success, right? Cus would have made Mike disciplined and lived the life of a fighter, a gladiator, a warrior that he is. And Cus would have kept Mike on the right track, and Mike could have ruled the world for a long, long, long time.
Joe Egan has a very unique perspective on fear, a fighter's perspective, and he says you can face everything and rise, or you can fear everything and run. And think about that. You know, a fighter, I'm sure as he's walking into the ring, I don't care who he is, as he's walking into the ring, you know, there's got to be a certain amount of fear, a certain amount of anxiety. You're getting in the ring, it's mano a mano, one-on-one, and what do? You know, you face it and you rise to the occasion, or you kind of cower out and you run. And I think that's how Joe has faced fear throughout every situation in his life. And I think that's something for all of us to listen to. You know, you can face it and rise, or fear it and run. And hopefully most of us will face fear and rise to the occasion like Joe has. It's amazing, Joe, the way you say that. I got to ask you something now, and this is really all about you. And like I said, my viewers, they like to hear how people overcome obstacles in their life. And I think you're a perfect example of that. And a couple of things I want to ask you about. Fear is a factor in everybody's life. And no matter how tough you are, no matter how strong you are, I spent 20 years on the street. I had so many guys around me, but there were times I walked into a room one night where my knees would try. I thought I was going to faint because I didn't know when the door opened up in the room that I was walking into, if I was going to get shot in the head or if I was going to walk out of the room. And I was scared, I'll be honest with you. And, I lived a life on the street. Every time, you've walked into a ring many times. You had a lot of success, as a fighter, and you were a tough guy. I understand that, you came back from a pretty bad accident that you had after, I think it was after your first fight. I know that's got to be depressing. Your career is just starting. You're doing well. Then all of a sudden, boom, you get knocked out by something like that. Then you had some adversity later on in your life. You did some prison time. All of this stuff has to weigh on you. How do you come back from something like that, Joe? What do you have inside of you that just says, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to make it back, and I'm going to reform myself. I'm going to get back into the ring, so to speak. What is it about you or anyone else that's able to do that?
There's two spellings of the word fear. The coward spells fear, forget everything and run. The fighter spells fear, face everything and rise. Wow. And that's what I've been a fighter, Michael, because I learned how to fight from a young age because I've been bullied. All my years boxing, I only ever had one tooth knocked out. I got 2 teeth knocked out by the bullies. I was Irish. My dad worked in England, and we came over to visit my dad in England, and I made my Holy Communion in England. I was 7 years of age. I was 7 years of age, Michael, when I made my Holy Communion in England, and I got bullied in England because I had the Irish accent. So I picked up the English accent, and when I came home to Dublin, I got bullied in Dublin because I had the English accent. Mm-hmm. So I learned how to fight. And the day I made my Holy Communion, I got my 2 front teeth knocked out in Manchester. And I got bullied as the eldest of 7 children. So when the bullies would finish beating on me, I used to jump back in and say, don't hit my brothers and sisters. Hit me. Beat me. Don't beat them. I can take this. And they used to batter me till where the pain, I became immune to pain. It's like my pain nerve endings were just gone. I was getting beaten to a pulp. So I learned how to fight, to stand up to the bullies. And the boxing gave me that courage, confidence, and ability to stand up to the bullies.
Joe talks about his dislike for bullies in his life. As a child, he encountered some bullies, and it kind of motivated him, maybe even to be a fighter and to get into the ring and do what he did. And he talks about the time when, these gang guys were trying to extort him, shake him down in his pub, his bar that he owned. And he looked at them as bullies, and I look at them as cowards. They were looking for protection money from Joe. And who they were protecting Joe from? From themselves. They were shaking him down. When gangs come and shake down people in their own community, in their own neighborhoods, that's cowardice. That's not strength. That's not gangs. In my own life in Cosa Nostra, if people would do that, I would look down on that. You don't prey on people in your own neighborhood, your own, people that can't defend themselves, so to speak. But Joe was able to. He stood up to them, and as a result, he overcame that. And Joe, I agree with you 100%. You don't prey on people. That's I don't care who you are or what life you're in.
A lot of things in my life that has happened, being able to stand up and fight the bullies has given me the character to stand up to a lot of things. If you can get into the ring and box, if you can stand up to the bullies and fight, if you can just walk tall, there's nothing in life that's going to faze you, because I believe if you can walk into that boxing ring to fight any man or woman, because there's women boxing now, nothing in life will faze you. And if you can stand up to the bullies, because nobody likes being bullied, Michael. Nobody likes being bullied. And I've had a lot of things in my life that have tested me in time, but the boxing has given me the character and the ability to stand up to the tests that have come at me through life. When my boxing career finished, I went into a bit of a depression, and people used to say to me about depression, and I never understood it. I used to say, what's depression? Until it actually hits you. See, when it hits you, it's like the sucker punch from hell, Michael. And for 2 years after my professional career, because I was suddenly getting paid for a sport that I loved. Whereas before I'd fight for trophies, I loved the sport. Now I'm getting paid for a sport that I love. I'm going to make my livelihood out of a sport that I love. I thought this is going to be a wonderful journey, but tragically it was cut short. After my second pro fight, I was involved in a very bad car crash. A coach that I was on, traveling back from my fight, was hit by another professional driver, a taxi driver, and I was badly wounded in the crash, and my boxing was finished. And my life sort of spiraled out of control. I had 2 years of depression, and until it actually hit me, I never knew what depression was. I never understood it. And my life spiraled out of control. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was in limbo land. And a very personal friend of my family, a man called Paddy Finn, his family had founded my amateur boxing club. He'd gone into the pub trade, and he came to the UK, was very successful in the pub trade. He contacted me. He said, Joe, I had to retire from boxing because of my bad back. He had a trap disc in his back and his career was cut short. And he said, there's life after boxing. He said, come and work for me in the pub trade in the UK. He said, and we'll train you up. I'd left school when I was 14 years of age, Michael. I left school with 2 swimming certificates, 800 metres and 1,500 metres. I wasn't very academic. I knew that my life was boxing and I was going to make my livelihood in boxing. I didn't need any real education. I regret that now because I believe education is a very important platform for life. Mm-hmm. And I neglected an education to go out and work on the doors of nightclubs and to pursue a boxing career. And I regret it a little bit. One of my sisters became a chartered accountant, so I know there is brains in the family. But she became a chartered accountant. But anyway, Paddy Finn gave me the opportunity to work for him. I worked for him for 2 years. I've done a BII Institute, British Institute of Innkeeping certificate. I've done 2 MBQ certificates. I learned the pub trade. And then 2 years on, I got my own pub. And with my business partner at the time, and Thomas McGill, we took a pub in Erdington called the Lyndhurst, had a big function room. We put on boxing tournaments, and it done really, really well. That was in 1997. I'd come here in 95. So in 1997, I'm now climbing the ladder to very, very success in the pub trade. But then the racketeers, the gangsters, they wanted to cash in on my success, my hard-working success. And they put a demand for protection money on the pub. Now, I thought this only happened in movies. Even though I stood on doors of nightclubs, I didn't understand underworld. You know, I thought confrontation on the door and punch-ups on the door.
I got to ask you though, Joe, were these, racketeers from where? They weren't, they weren't Cosa Nostra Mafia. Who are they?
Racketeers, 15 years in the protection racket, burning down premises. Right, one of this particular family had actually killed his best friend. Really? He stuck a sword into his best friend. So if they can do that to his best friend, what chance has somebody got that they don't like? Exactly. You know, so they put a hand in on the 19th of July, 1998. We've been in the pub since September 97. Very successful in the pub, living a good life, a second chance at life to make a success. My boxing was being took from me. Now I've got a second chance in life. Not many people get a second chance. Not many people get a first chance. Right. So now I've got a second. I'm very lucky. And these, for want of another word, scum, tried to ruin what opportunity I had. And on the 19th of July, 1998, they demanded £500 a week protection money from my business. I'm a fighting man. I've grown up standing up to bullies. But at this stage, I was a businessman. Not saying I'd gone soft, Michael. Not saying I'd gone soft, but I thought, I'm a licensee for a pub. I'm a pillar of the community. I don't need to fight anymore. Let the police deal with this, right? I spoke to my local sergeant, chap called Andy Gilbert, a gentleman of the force, you know, because he was the way a policeman should be. Because people criticise the police. People say, oh, what, the police, everything else. See the way society is with the police here. Imagine the way society, how bad it would be if the police weren't there. We would have anarchy. We had chaos. You know, we are living in a strange society, even with the police there. The police get criticised. My sister's husband, my brother-in-law, just retired from the NYPD, you know, and I look at society and I see the way the world is. And that's what the police trying to keep control. Imagine what it would be like if the police weren't there.
You know, Joe, what he said is so true, you know, when it comes to the police and when it comes to God. The same people that are yelling for the police to go away, we don't need the police, are the same people that don't believe in God or don't want God in their life. And yet, the way Joe says it, and I agree with him, when something goes down or when you're in trouble or when things turn bad, who's the first person you turn to or the first thing you turn to? God. God help me. And when something goes wrong on the street, who are the first people that you call? 9/11, the cops, okay? We need the police, and we certainly need God in our lives. And actually, it's the other way around. We need God first, and we need the police. And any thought about getting rid of the police is just insanity. And Joe, you said it best, and I agree with you in every which way. Well, Joe, I got to tell you, it's very interesting that you say that, because I agree with you 100%. And some people question me, Michael, you were on the street, you were on the other side of law enforcement, and I tell them, wait a second, hold on. I said, I have 7 children of my own. I have a wife. When they walk down the street, I want them to be protected, and I expect the police to do that. We got to have police in our society. Yeah, and there's a movement here in the United States now to eliminate police, and I think they're absolutely out of their mind. We need the police. We need law enforcement.
Listen to this, Michael, right? People that criticize the police and people that criticize religion, right?
You're right.
When the shit hits the fan, and the shit hits the fan for a lot of people, what's the first thing they say? God help me,
God help
phone
me.
the police. God help me, phone the police. But the same people that condemn religion and criticize the police, when the shit hits the fan, the first thing they say, phone the police, God help me.
Absolutely.
You know what? And I believe that the police have to be there. I've had my run-ins with them. You know, I don't like seeing them in my rearview mirror, but I'm glad that they're there. And on this particular day, when I was attacked, I phoned my sergeant, my friend, and I said, Andy, this gang is gathering. They're going to attack. I knew through that week, because there was threats coming, I knew through that week the tension was building, but I didn't want to attack them. My business partner said, let's attack them. Let's take it to them. And I said, no, we're business people. I'm living upstairs in my business. I've got my home above my business. You know what? We don't need to attack. We're not vigilantes. Let the police deal with it. On the day of the attack, I got a phone call to say this gang is on the way to attack. I phoned my sergeant, my friend. I said, Andy, these men are gathering to attack. He said, Joe, I'm on my way to you. I'll radio the police station. I'll get men to physically attend their premises and disband them. As he was on his way to me, he got sent to a Mickey Mouse alarm call. There was nothing concerned like what was happening to me. And half an hour after I made the phone calls to him, 37 men on my car park armed with guns, hatchets, machetes and knives attacked my premises. I had a function room with a Holy Communion on in the function room. 26th of July, 1998. I was shot twice. There was people, that headlines in the newspaper, they said the Lyndhurst attack made the Braveheart film look like a Walt Disney movie.
Wow.
It was savage. There was carnage. Like I said, I was badly wounded. There was a lot of people badly wounded. But on that particular day in the pub, customers rallied together and fought like gladiators, fought like Trojans and battled. And we beat the gang that attacked. And people that fought from my premises broke stools, broke arms of chairs to fight against knives, guns, hatchets and machetes. And it was a bad day. It was a really, really bad day. And I'm not saying it was the makings of me in Birmingham, but it gave me great support from the people of Birmingham, because this gang had ruled Birmingham for 15 years and people were terrified of them. And I stood my ground and people supported me from that. And the friendship and spirit that I got from the community of Erdington and the surrounding areas of Birmingham lifted me, you know, because when the business was closed for a period of time, where we rebuilt the premises because the premises was badly damaged and a lot of things destroyed, people came to support me. People helped me. And when we opened again, the business blossomed, because I said to people, I said, if the business doesn't blossom, if we don't make a success of this business, the people that attacked me on the 26th of July 1998, they win, because they didn't beat me on the day. If the business fails, in the long term, they win. So I said, we've got to make a success of this business. I've got to rebuild it. And that's the fighting spirit. And I did rebuild the business, and we made a success of the business. And then we sold on the business because I just got tired of the pub trade. But when I was rebuilding the business, I'm ashamed to say, Michael, I got into trouble trying to get money to rebuild the business because I had so much drive in me to make a success of the business, because I didn't want these scum that had attacked me on the day, that didn't beat me on the day, to win in the long term. Yeah. So I went down a road that I'd never gone down before. I'd never been in trouble in my life. I'd honourable discharge from the Irish Army, Delta Airlines FAA registered, licensee for a pub. I'm not throwing bouquets at myself, but I'd never been in trouble in my life. And to get money to keep my business afloat, to try and make it a success again, I got into trouble. I turned to crime. I'm ashamed to say, and I'm ashamed to say, the only time in my whole life, up until that I'd ever seen my daddy cry. In every boy's eyes, his dad's the toughest man on the planet. Yes. And in my eyes, my daddy's the toughest man on the planet. And one time when I was a little boy, I watched my dad come in from work, and my mother, if she didn't greet him at the front door with a hug, he'd say, Anne, whatever I've done, I'm sorry, we'll put it right. But this particular day, we were waiting to see my dad come in from work because he'd bring sweets in for me and my brothers and sisters. But my mum sent us to bed early. Get up to bed, get up to bed, get up to bed. It was only 4:30 in the day. I thought, it's too early to be going to bed. What's wrong? And my mum was pacing the hall like a headless chicken. But what had happened was my granddad, my daddy's dad, had actually died. Oh. And we didn't understand what was going on. So when my mum met my dad in the hall, I'm looking down through the banisters. I got my arm around one of my brothers. And I saw my mum speak to my dad in the hallway of the house. And I saw my dad take his head in his hands and start crying. And I got the fright of my life because my dad was crying. I thought, he's my hero. What's he crying for? Anyway, we found out afterwards that his daddy had died, and it was a big impact on him and on us. Well, years later, Michael, when I was found guilty of a crime, and I looked up to the gallery, and my daddy was sitting in the gallery, and I saw him take his head in his hands and cry. And even talking about it now, I feel sick. Yeah. You know, that me getting into trouble has made my dad cry. And I swore then I would never, ever, ever get into trouble again. I couldn't put him through that, or my mum, or my family. But at the time, it was desperate times, desperate measures. I didn't want this gang to succeed where it didn't succeed on the day they attacked. And to keep the business afloat, I resorted to crime. I'm ashamed even to talk about it now. But I got captured. I went to prison. While I was in prison, I actually saved a man's life when I was in prison. So,
you know, the way you've come out of that and the way you speak about it now, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We've all, listen, you know, you're preaching to the choir here because, you know, when I was on the street, I was doing the wrong thing for 20 years. And, you know, I have no excuses. There was choices that I made in my life, and I suffered the consequences, which were well deserved at that time. But, you know, look, we all made mistakes, but the fact that you feel it in your heart that way and you know, you've come out of it, you know, says a lot about you personally. And I will tell you this, you know, I can relate to that. It was 1968, I believe. My dad was in jail. He was indicted for murder. It was a bad case. I thought, you know, my family was devastated over it. And at that time, my grandmother passed away. And my dad was one of 19 children, but he was my grandmother's favorite. They only had 4 boys, the rest were girls. And I'll never forget the day we were in the funeral home, and my father was allowed to come and visit, and they brought him there, law enforcement brought him there, he was handcuffed. And my dad was always this pillar of strength, you know, tough guy, pillar of strength. And when I seen him walk up to the coffin, and he just had a breakdown right there, and the whole funeral parlor was crying, because we never expected that from my father. It was devastating to me. And so, I mean, I can relate to that, to see somebody that you look up to that's so strong, and it's always our dads, to see him have a breakdown like that. You don't ever want to see that again, ever. And the one time I disappointed my dad, you know, in my life, I know he was pretty hurt by it. I didn't see tears in his eyes, but I know I heard him, and I never forgot it. You know, and my dad did some things with me that, you know, really upset me too. I was very disappointed. It broke my heart. But aside from that, Joe, I always loved my dad. I always forgave him. I always loved him because I knew that he really loved me. And sometimes things in life just happen, you know, and you got to forgive. Forgiveness is everything in life. You don't want to carry the burden around of having, you know, animosity towards somebody that you love especially. So I can relate to the way you felt about your father, because I felt the same way. I'll tell you, my dad motivated me to do so many things in my life. I mean, I went into the street because of my dad to try to help him out. I tried to be the best possible guy on the street to make my father proud. That's what it was all about for me, you know, for quite some time. So, I mean, I can relate to that. And it's wonderful to hear, you know, that we have parents that meant so much to us and that, you know, we wanted to shine in their eyes.
Ground they stand on. I worship the ground my mum and dad stand on. I love them more than words can say. You know, there's nothing in this world that can compare to how I feel for my mum and dad. And when I came out of prison, Michael, I made a comeback in boxing. I needed the money. That was one of the reasons. But the most important reason was I wanted to do my dad proud again, you know. And I thought I didn't want to be Joe the convict. I want to be known as Joe the boxer again. Mm-hmm. And I made a comeback in the boxing. There was a big write-up in the Boxing News, which is a world famous boxing magazine.
Yes.
And that's the ring. But the Boxing News it's a UK magazine, but it sells around the world. And there was a headlines in the boxing magazine that said George Foreman made the comeback after 10 years. Big Joe Egan makes the comeback after 12 years. To get mentioned in the same paragraph as George Foreman, one of the greatest fighters of all time, was such an honour to get mentioned alongside his name. Anyway, I made a comeback after 12 years out of the ring, and I actually forgot what the fear was like, Michael, to walk to the boxing ring. And the venue, the guy that I was going to fight, a guy called Mark Williams, I trained with on 2 occasions for 2 of his fights. I got him ready for 2 of his wins. A tough guy, hard man. He hadn't boxed for 2.5 years. He'd actually been shot, and he 2.5 years out of boxing. He was making a comeback after 2.5 years. I was making a comeback after 12 years. We'd done the press conference. I was hoping to fight in America. I was hoping to fight around the world. So I thought, if I've got anything left, I was 38 years of age, 37, gone on 38 maybe. I thought, if I've got anything left, I'm going to box in Ireland, because the Irish people will tell me, you've got nothing left.
Right.
If I box in England, English people might be saying, oh, you look all right. The Irish will tell me the truth. Mm-hmm. So I boxed in Dublin. I'm in a venue that I boxed in as an amateur. I'm now at the venue boxing as a pro. And I used to enter the ring to Irish music, but my ex-fiancée, she'd run away with Michael Flatley, the Irish river dance, famous world river dance star. Mm-hmm. And when my ship was sinking, she abandoned ship and she jumped ship with Michael Flatley, the biggest star in the world. And it was a bad time for me going through what I was going through, but having her abandon me was even harder. So when I made my comeback, I wouldn't come into Irish music. I thought, no, I'm not going to come into Irish music, because I didn't want to do anything for Michael Flatley, and I was very bitter towards him. Anyway, I spent that day of the fight going through some music with my friend and his wife, who used to choreograph stage show, Steve Dawson, who I trained with many times. And I'll tell you a funny story about me and Steve in a second. You'll laugh at the story. But him and his missus at the time, she helped me pick the music. And I picked a song by the Fugees, Ready or Not, Here I Come, You Can't Hide. And I thought, what a song to enter the boxing ring, because there is no hiding place in a boxing ring. But that evening of the fight, I'm nice and relaxed. I've had my sleep. I've had my carbs. I've had the preparation. I'm confident. I'm sitting in the dressing room. I'm getting my hands bandaged. Darren Corbett, the Commonwealth champion, he's come into the dressing room. He goes, Joe, the guy you're fighting's in the next room. I know the guy I'm fighting. We've done the press conferences together. We knew each other. We trained together before. He said, Joe, scream and shout. Go, let the madness in you come out. Let him put the fear of God into him. So I start laughing. I'm getting my hands bandaged. And I'm laughing. And that picture was on the back page of the Irish and British newspapers of nice and relaxed. So I was nice and relaxed. I've got my hands bandaged. The officials come over. They check my hands. They stamp my hands. They say, glove up. the fear kicked in, Michael.
Really?
I forgot what the fear was like.
Wow.
But George Foreman, as I said earlier on, he spoke on a video called Champions Forever with Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Larry Holmes, 5 of the greatest champions of all time. And George Foreman spoke about the time he fought Ken Norton. And he said, I'm looking across the ring at the finest specimen of a man that I've ever seen. He said he was chiseled. He said, I walked to the center of the ring. Ken Norton walked to the center of the ring. And George said, I was so glad that Ken didn't look down because my knees were shaking. And I thought, George Foreman. I'm only immortal compared to that man. Anyway, the fear is kicked in. And that's the great thing about the boxing game. If you can overcome that fear and walk to the ring to fight, like I said earlier, nothing in life can phase you. So I've now got told, glove up, make my entrance to the ring. I walked from the dressing room, which I'd walked from before because I'd boxed in the venue before as an amateur. So I knew my way to the boxing ring. I walked from the dressing room out into the arena, up to the ring, and I walked right past the ring. I was actually walking out of the venue. The fear had kicked in. I'd forgot 12 years out of the ring. I was walking out of the venue, and a couple of guys at the exit door tapped me, and they went, Joe. And I've gone, what? They said, you've missed the steps to the ring. And I went, oh, yeah, and I had to turn round. They hadn't stopped me. I would have walked right out of that venue.
Wow.
I'd have gone home to the house. They're knocking on the door with a man, let me in. I didn't want to be there. But I walked back to the ring. I got into the ring. For 2 rounds, I took a pasting. I've come back to my corner after 2 rounds. And my old trainer, Tony Mann, he's dead now, God rest him. Tony sent me a slap. And I said, what? He said, wake up. You're not in the fight. He's peppering you with punches. He said, come on, get into it. I was a little bit rusty. 12 years, he was a little bit sharper than me. So round 3, I got into the fight. Round 4, I got more into the fight. And in round 5, I had him in the corner and I pushed him to keep him in the corner because he was moving around the ropes, and I pushed him. But as I pushed him, it dislocated his shoulder and his arm came out. And he was trying to fight with one arm. You can't fight with one arm in a boxing match.
Right.
Unless you're something exceptional. Danny Williams done it to Mark Potter in the 10th round. He caught him with a shot in the British heavyweight title fight. It was an exceptional performance. But most of the time, you can't fight with one arm. It's hard enough with 2.
Sure.
Anyway, the fight was up. But it was a win, Michael. It was a win. And I asked people, Brendan Ingle, a great trainer, trained Nassim Hamed, trained many champions. He was in attendance. He had a fighter on the bill called John O'Brien, the Thunderbolt, Dean Smith, the promoter. I asked them, how did I look? They said, you looked okay, Joe. The first 2 rounds, you were rusty. You come alive in round 3 and 4, you looked okay. There's still something left in the tank. So I thought, right, I'm going to fight around the world now. I'm going to get a few more fights, get some more money, get my pride back, make my dad proud. My mum never wanted me to box. No mother wants to see her son being beaten up.
Right.
But my dad was happy with my boxing. So now I'm getting ready again for another fight. So I spoke to my friend Steve Dawson, who I trained with many, many times. He'd helped me prepare for this fight. I said, Steve, I'm going to fight again. I feel good. I've been told that I've got something left in the tank. Will you help me prepare? He said, okay. So I'm staying in his house. I'm getting ready to fight again. We're going out sparring this particular day, and his little boy Tristan was there. And Tristan said, where are you going? I said, me and your daddy are going to go sparring. He goes, who's the toughest? Now, in every boy's eyes, his dad's the toughest man on the planet. So I said to Tristan, your daddy is the toughest man on the planet, Tristan. So we went sparring. Nothing vicious. Wasn't even a great punch. He hit me. I ducked into the punch, and he split my eye open. And I felt the rip. I felt the blood running down my face. I was 38 years of age. And I knew, Michael, at that moment in time when that punch landed, I knew my career was over.
That was it.
You just know. I knew that last punch.
Yeah. That
was the finishing punch of my comeback, my boxing career. And I went to the hospital. I got the stitches put in my eye. My eye had swelled up. And we've gone back to Steve's house. And his little boy Tristan is at the front door and he's looking, and my face bruised and stitched up. And he goes, what happened, Big Joe? I said, oh, yeah, Daddy cut me when we were sparring. He said, you said he was the toughest man on the planet. Now, if ever there was insult to injury, it was at that moment in time. I just thought,
right.
Yeah, thanks for you telling me. But I knew it was over. But I would finish my career with a win. Even though it wasn't the best of wins, the guy had to retire because of a dislocated shoulder, it was still a win. And then I was back to being Joe the boxer again. And I'd got my pride back. I'd got my affection and love from a dad that I hadn't lost anyway, Mike.
Right.
In my heart, I felt that I had, because I'd embarrassed and shamed them and my family. But now I was Joe the boxer again. And wonderful things have happened since that comeback fight. I got a friend of mine, Ken Purchase. He approached me. He said, Joe, would you do some after dinner speaking? This was I can't remember what year it was, Michael, 2003, 2004. So I said, yeah. I said, I'm well able to talk. I'm Irish. We gifted with the Blarney Stone. You know, we're well able to talk. And he gave me the opportunity to sit on the top table with Joe Frazier and Marvis. I trained with Mike for the Marvis fight. And I'm sharing the top table with these guys, legends. And it was an honor and the best feeling in the world to get applauded alongside these guys. And when I was in attendance, there was a man called Cass Pennant in attendance. Cass is a publisher in England. And he spoke to me. He said, Joe, he said, you're a fascinating character. Your story is great. He said, I'm a book publisher. And I joked, half joking, half out. And I said, well, you might write a book about me. He said, well, I'm sure if you could get Mike Tyson involved, we could get a book out of it. So I contacted Mike. Mike and Tom did the forward for the book.
Right.
Mike came, Kate and Tom to launch the book in Canary Wharf. It brought Canary Wharf to a standstill. One of the best days of my life. Thousands and thousands of people in attendance at Canary Wharf in 2005 for the book launch. I know everybody was there for Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was there for me.
He was there for you. That's right.
He was there for me. He was there for me. And it was one of the best days of my life. And Cass Pennant, who had the book published, Pennant Publications, had also had a book written about his life, and it was getting turned into a movie called Cass. And he said to me, he said, Joe, do you fancy doing a bit of acting in the film? And I thought to myself, well, I've acted my way through a boxing career. I'll give it a go. So he gave me a part in the film. And I played the landlord of the Britannia pub. And there's a famous British actor called Tamer Hassan, who's in the film. And he said, Joe, you've got a great presence on screen. My agent could do something with you. Do you fancy working with my agent and getting you some movie parts? I said, yeah. I said, I've had 2 bites of the apple. I've had the boxing took from me because of a car crash. I've had the pub trade took me from because of the racketeers. This is a 3rd bite of the apple. This doesn't happen. This doesn't. How many people in life, Michael, do you know to get 3 bites at the apple?
You're right,
getting a
Joe.
3rd bite, an acting career. So I thought, yeah. I said, please. He introduced me to his agent. His agent said there's a part in a Sherlock Holmes film with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. There's a character called Mac Murdo to fight Robert Downey Jr. in the Sherlock Holmes film. Directed by Ritchie, Warner Brothers production. They said, Joe, would you like to go for the audition? So I've gone for the audition. The casting agent said, Joe, look into the camera lens, give an intimidating stare, say the line. So I've looked into the camera lens, I gave the intimidating stare. They went, wow. They said, you've got an amazing intimidating stare. I said, I've had to look into the eyes of Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis to try and them to intimidate a couple of casting agents is no problem. Anyway, I got the part, Michael. I went along to the read-through in carriages. My nameplate, Joe Egan, next to Jude Law, Robert Downey Jr., Rachel McAdams, who went on to get the Academy Award for Southpaw, Eddie Martin, sitting opposite Joel Silver, the CEO of Warner Brothers, and Guy Ritchie. And Guy said, Joe, I've been trying to get you in one of my films for a long time. I said, you're joking. I'm Robert Downey Jr. leaned in. This is Iron Man. And he said, Joe, you come with a fearsome reputation. I couldn't believe, Michael, that these people knew me, but they knew me through Mike Tyson. And I was humbled and honoured that they knew me through Mike Tyson. Anyway, we travelled in the minibus to do the practice fight. And Guy said, how are things, Joe? I said, things are okay, Guy. I'm making ends meet. He said, has your agent told you what you're getting for the fight scene? I said, Guy, I never even asked. I'm just so honoured to be in your film. Michael, when he told me, it was more than I got in any of my professional fights. Wow. And I was deadly serious. I said, Guy, for that money, I said, Robert Downey Jr. can really hit me. You can kick me as well if you want to. And he took a fit of laugh and he said, Joe, I don't want you beaten up. I said, Guy, I've been beaten up for a lot less. I do a few weeks in hospital for that money. I didn't have to do the thing. I was serious, Michael. I would have been hospitalised for a few weeks for that money. No problem.
I get it.
He said, Joe, you don't have to get beaten up. And he gave me a scene in the prison scene that wasn't in the script where I get called Big Joe, a Warner Brothers production, directed by Guy Ritchie. and getting called my name, Big Joe, by an Academy Award-winning actor, Robert Downey Jr., and it's made all the beatings that I've took so worthwhile, because it made my mum proud, because it was immortalised on screen. And my boxing career had made my dad proud, and now this movie had made my mum proud. You know, she was so happy. And since then, I've gone on to do more films. The parts are getting bigger with experience. I've worked with a number of Academy Award-winning actors. I've been portrayed on screen as a tough guy, as a gangster. And in life, I've had to live the life of a tough guy. I suppose I haven't gone to prison. People can say I was a bit of a gangster. I wasn't. But to portray it on screen is quite easy. I'm not any great actor. You know, I look the part of a tough guy.
Yeah, but you yourself, Joe. You probably it probably comes easy to you because you're being yourself in the roles.
It's not any great acting ability. People say, Joe, you play the tough guy very, very well. I said, I've had to live the life of a tough guy. And to portray it on screen is quite easy. And they say, you're not fazed by having dialogue with Academy Award-winning actors. I said, no, because if you can walk to the ring to spar with Mike Tyson and box Lennox Lewis, nothing can faze me, you know. And I'm loving my acting career. The parts are getting bigger, Michael, with experience. And like I said, it's making my mum very proud. I get killed a lot in the movies. 2 films I get killed twice in. People say, how can you get killed twice in a movie? I said, I get killed as a human being and turned into a vampire, and then I get killed as a vampire. I get killed as a human being, turned into a werewolf, and get killed as a werewolf. So in 2 films, I get killed twice. I get killed in loads of movies, but it's fun, and it's only on screen, you know, and I'm enjoying the third bite of the apple.
Well, Joe, I tell you, you know, I could say this honestly, just in sitting with you and hearing about you, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I mean, you got a great outlook on life, and, you know, through the ups and downs and everything else, the way you perceive life is great. Everybody should have that same outlook. And I want to say this, you know, when you talk about those gangsters that preyed on you, you know,
yes.
It's such an act of cowardice, in my view. And I'm a street guy, or I was a street guy. When people prey on people, they're looking for protection money. Who are they protecting? They're protecting you from themselves, from the same people that want to prey on you. And for me, I find that, you know, it's an act of cowardice, and it's despicable. And I didn't even respect guys on the street that would act that way. So the fact that you stood up to them at that time is, you know, I really commend you for that. I mean that. And not a lot of people can do that, but, you know, you got a tough heart, and you know, the fact that you did what you did to come back and show them that they're not going to beat you, you know, I really respect that in you, Joe, and I mean that. Because I hate bullying of any kind, and that's a bully and it's a coward. To come down there with 37 guys and, you know, I mean, what is that? That's not a man. You know, that's not men that do things like that. So I commend you for what you did and how you stood up to them.
Well, that particular day, like I said earlier, talking to you, that particular day, I was very, very fortunate that there was people in the pub that actually stood their ground and helped me. One particular guy, a guy called Steve Dalton, I'm going to mention his name because Steve, I asked Steve in my book, can I put his name into my book? Because this man ran at the bullets and got shot twice before I got shot. And 2 weeks before that attack, I knew who this guy was. He's a tough guy, ex-fighter. And I was a little bit wary of him. And I thought, I don't want him in my pub. He's not a troublemaker, but I wasn't scared of him, but I was just wary of him. And he came to my pub with his brother-in-law, Jason McAlinden. Steve's married to Jason's sister, Tina, and they've got a boy called Jack Dempsey Dalton, famous heavyweight, famous fighter. And Steve came to my pub doors with Jason. He said, Joe, I've got a bit of a reputation and I'm a welcome in your pub. He said, I'm not a troublemaker. I said, I appreciate that, Steve, but trouble follows you. And I'd much prefer if you brought your business elsewhere. Hoping that he would walk away, but having the courage to stand up to him if he didn't walk away. And I was very pleased that particular day he walked away. My business partner said to me, he said, Joe, we're judging him on a reputation that we don't know anything about him, just what people say. Why don't you give him the benefit of the doubt and let him use the pub? If he causes trouble, we should be capable of putting him out. And I followed him down to another pub, the Cross Keys, and I walked into the other pub on the same evening, and I said, Steve, I said, I've judged you on what people say. I have no right to judge you. But I said, I'm going to tell you something now. You're very welcome in my pub, but if you cause trouble in my pub, if I can't beat you from the front, I will beat you from behind. I will adapt to win. I'm not ashamed to say it. I will adapt to win because my pub is my livelihood. It's my second opportunity to make a life for myself. I live above the premises. It's not just my livelihood, it's my home. And I will fight tooth and nail for my home. I said, so don't cause trouble. He said, Joe, I won't cause trouble. 2 weeks later, when that attack happened at the pub, Steve was in the pub with his wife, Tina, with his two sisters, with some of his family members, having a drink, enjoying the family atmosphere of the pub. It was a family pub. And the attack happened. We were thinking that the police were going to stop this attack happening. And the attack happened. And Steve Dalton was the first man to run past me to attack the men that attacked me and attacked the pub and attacked the patrons of my pub. I hid behind a wall. I saw him get shot. I blessed myself. I thought, oh my God, he's dead. Blessings of God, he wasn't. But afterwards, like I said, there was a lot of people wounded that day. He was the bravest man I'd ever seen in my life. And I've been in a lot of brave men's company. Afterwards, when Mike Tyson came to the UK to prepare for one of his fights, I took men and women from my pub that had battled on that day to put their life on the line for me. But Steve Dalton always says, Joe, if them animals that had got into the pub, he said, my wife, my sister, my family was in the pub. He said, I had to protect them. I said, Steve, as far as I'm concerned, you've done it for me and for the patrons of the pub. But when we went down to see Mike in the hotel in London at his training camp, Mike Tyson embraced Steve as if he knew Steve all his life. And he said, Joe, any more trouble at your pub and I'm landing. And Steve Dalton and the other people that had been on the day of the attack, all the jaws dropped, that Mike Tyson knew what had happened at my pub. I said, yeah, Mike's my friend. I said, I keep him up to date with what happens in my life. I've never asked Mike for money. All I've ever asked Mike for is what he gives me, love and affection. He would be there for me if I needed him financially. I've never gone cap in hand to anybody in my life. You know, I'm a working man. I don't drink or smoke. I don't take drugs. I've worked hard all my life. And I'll be a working man till the last breath leaves my body. I've got a good work ethic. I've worked hard at the boxing. I've worked hard in the pub trade. I'm working hard in the acting. And I enjoy the rewards that work brings. And Mike that day made me so proud again because the people that were with me that day at the hotel in London, he made them all know and be aware that he knew what they had done for me. And he thanked them for what they had done for me that day. And Steve Dalton in particular. And when we had a big dinner in the Metropole Hilton in Birmingham, 1,500 people in attendance, Mike Tyson called Steve Dalton to the stage and he presented Steve with a signed copy of my book, signed by him and Tom Patty, who also thanked Steve for what he did for me that day. And they presented Mike with a signed copy and another gift. And they thanked him again in front of 1,500 people in attendance at that dinner for the bravery that man showed. Courage, like you can't put into words. Who runs at guns? Who runs at bullets? You can't explain somebody running at bullets. No. You know, General Custer used to say, ride to the sound of the cannons. Yeah, you're riding to the sounds of the cannons. Bravery. That's but right. He was actually running. He was actually running at gunfire. And to me, when a man puts his life on the line for no financial gain, for the friendship and affection for his friend, that's the ultimate sacrifice. Blessings of God, he did. Blessings of God, he didn't die that day. Blessings of God, nobody died that day. There was a lot of people wounded, but nobody died that day.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Joe. And, you know, the more I talk to you, the more I'm enjoying it. And I know we can't go on forever, but I want to throw a couple of names at you. I want a quick thought from you, and then we'll have to say goodbye. But a couple of names that I know and I know you have, you know, regard for in some way. Muhammad Ali.
Idolized Muhammad Ali. To me, Muhammad Ali wasn't just the greatest man to enter a boxing ring. He was one of the greatest men to enter the world. Boxing was blessed to have Muhammad Ali. Like it says, GOAT, greatest of all time. I was at his home in Michigan. Al Capone used to own his house that Muhammad Ali lived in. And I was in his house. I was in his company in Louisville. I met him at the Mike Tyson fight when Mike fought McBride, and Layla Ali boxed on the bill. And I met him. I was very blessed to be in that man's company on 4 occasions. My dad had actually met him before me, and I used to envy my dad that he'd met Muhammad Ali. I used to do an Ali shuffle when I boxed as a tribute to Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
I adored him and idolized him. And to meet the man on one occasion was something else. To meet him on 4 occasions and to meet him in his home was very, very special. And when I did meet him the first time, I was actually shaking more than he was shaking, and he had Parkinson's disease. But that man was the longest surviving victim of Parkinson's disease. Yeah. That fighting spirit, was something out of this ordinary, out of this world. He was very, very special. And he could have turned his hand to any sport. He could have been an American football player. He could have been a basketball player. Like I said, boxing was blessed to have a man like him. And I agree. The world could do with a man like him today to unite us, because Muhammad Ali made a statement once. He said, I wish people could love each other as much as they love me. And what a beautiful statement, because everybody loved Muhammad Ali, and he wanted people to love each other as much as they loved him. He just had that way, the affection and the admiration that people had for him.
We agree on that, and that's a great tribute to him. Smoking Joe Frazier.
Smoking Joe Frazier, a phenomenal fighter who was partially blind in one of his eyes. Now, like I said, the fight in a sport, when you've got all your attributes and all your blessings, whether it be a punch, whether it be a height, whether it be a reach, your reflexes, we need every bit of advantage that we can pull together to try and to get by in a fighting sport. And he was fighting partially blind in one eye. To achieve the success that he achieved, being partially blind. Imagine how good he would have done if he was able to see full sight. Yeah. I have a friend of mine, Barrington Patterson, and Barrington fought one of the Klitschko's for the world kickboxing title. Barrington is a referee now in the bare knuckle. There's an organization that's going to take over the world. It's called the BKB. Boxing originated from bare knuckle fighting.
Right.
And then we rules to adapt the sport to be a bit safer. They brought in the bandages, the hand wraps, and then the gloves. But it's gone full circle now. It's gone back to bare knuckle. Right. Because I'm not saying the boxing has gone too safe, but it's gone too political. The best boxers aren't fighting the best boxers. Managers, like years ago, at this moment in time, we've got Tyson Fury and we've got Anthony Joshua, 2 world heavyweight champions. Right. And their management teams seem to be making them avoid each other. Years ago,
they would have fought, right?
Mayweather, when he fought Pacquiao, was 5 years too late for Pacquiao. It should have happened when we were both on top of that game.
Right.
And boxing promoters and management, if they've got a commodity in their fighter, they want to try and protect their fighter from somebody that's too much of a risk. So they put them in with fighters that aren't as risky for them to fight because they're protecting their commodity. The fighter, he wants to fight the best out there because he wants to test himself against the best out there. He wants the best he can be. So he's got to fight the best to bring out the best of him. But the managers and the promoters say, oh, this could be a risky fight and we don't want to lose this commodity that we've got because this is our golden goose or our golden egg. And people have got a little bit disillusioned with boxing because the best aren't fighting the best. So then the UFC came along, which was another combative sport. So the best was fighting the best. Then suddenly, their fighters were getting protected. Dana White wants the best to fight the best. But some of the management of individual fighters are saying, oh, hold on, that might be a bit risky. So I'm not fighting him. And they're avoiding each other. So now the bare knuckle has come back again. The best is fighting the best. And the fans are getting value for money. The fights are 50-50 fights. The best man, they haven't got women into it yet. But I'm sure women will eventually get into bare knuckle. Maybe there is women in the bare knuckle, not at the organisations that I've been involved with, the BKB. They haven't had the women fight at any of the shows I've been at. There might be women fighting in other parts of their world in the bare knuckle. But it's the best fighting the best. And there's a referee called Barrington Patterson who referees the bare knuckle in the UK for the BKB. And he's blind in one eye. His sister threw a can of pop at him when he was a child, and the can of pop hit him in the face and took his eye out. Wow. And that man went on to fight for the world heavyweight kickboxing title with one eye. and lost to one of the Klitschko's for the world heavyweight kickboxing title. A phenomenal fighter. And for him to achieve what he has achieved, being blind in one eye, and for what Joe Frazier achieved, being partially blind in one eye, is something else, you know. And when I'd done a talk with Joe, Joe said he used to throw his left hook, big wide left hook. He said because he couldn't see his opponent properly, the bigger the swing, the better chance he had of hitting his opponent.
Wow.
They have more of a wider range with that punch. I wouldn't have wanted to be the referee in any of Joe Frazier's fights because it hit me with the power that he had. But they boxed for 15 rounds. And Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier,
they never backed up. Frazier never backed up. He only knew how to go forward. That was it. I loved him. I loved him too. But I loved him. I loved Ali. They were great. I got one more for you. Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard.
To me, boxing at its finest. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard, he is a beautiful person. And if you look at the man, to come out of a sport, being in the fights that he was in, with some of the greatest fighters of all time. He was in an era with Duran, with Hagler, Tommy Hearns. He was in an era of all greats. To be a great, to get recognized as a great, you've got to beat greats. And he beat some of the greatest fighters on the planet. But to come out with all his faculties and to be able to talk and be as articulate as he is, and to have not a mark on his face, he's a beautiful looking man. Yeah. You know, and I've had a man in Dublin. I remember the first time I met Sugar Ray Leonard, I was in the Catskills, and he'd come to the Catskills, and he had a great affection for Mike. He had a great affection for Cuss. He had a great affection for Tom. Mike tells a story that when he was in the Young Offenders Centre, that Sugar Ray Leonard came to the Young Offenders Centre. I don't know if you're familiar with this story, Michael, but he said that Mike at the time was a shy boy in this Young Offenders Centre, and Sugar Ray Leonard had come to the centre and was given all the inmates all the attention. And Mike was in a corner, staying on his own, standing on his own. And as Sugar Ray Leonard was leaving, he saw Mike and he came over to Mike. He didn't leave the Young Offender Centre until he spoke to Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson remembers that, and he has such a great affection for Sugar Ray Leonard from that day. Anyway, when I met Sugar Ray in the Catskills, I spoke to him, and I said, one day you might visit Ireland. I had him on the phone to my mum in the Catskills. One day you might visit Ireland. And he did. He visited Ireland like Mike Tyson had visited Ireland to visit my mum. And I'm very proud that I walked through the town I'm from, Ringsend in Dublin, with Mike Tyson and with Sugar Ray Leonard. And they both visited my mum. They had cups of tea with my mum, you know. And Ray Leonard is probably one of the greatest ambassadors for the sport that you could ever wish for. Because boxing doesn't just need great fighters. It also needs great ambassadors. And I don't think they come much finer than Sugar Ray Leonard. He is one of the greatest ambassadors that boxing could wish for. They've got it in him. And one of the greatest fighters of all time.
Well, Joe, I agree with you on all three of those men you just mentioned. And I got to tell you this, you're a great ambassador for not only the fighting game, but just as a human being. And I've done many of these interviews or sit-downs, and I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this one. And Mike and Tom told me I would. He said, Joe's a great storyteller. He's a great guy. They had nothing but good things to say about you. A lot of affection I've seen as they spoke about you. They're going to see this for sure, and I know they're going to enjoy it. And I got to tell you, I really did enjoy this. And I'm gonna read your book now, and I'm going to look at all those movies that you were in. I'm going to keep my eye out for you for now. And I will tell you, I want to meet you one day, whether it be here or on the other side of the pond, as they say. I hope we get the opportunity to meet.
I'm looking forward to shaking your hand, giving you an embrace.
Yes.
Any friends of Mike and Tom Patty is a friend of mine. And Mike and Tom, if you do watch this, which I'm sure you will, I just want to tell you, I love you both dearly. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Well, Joe, and thank you very much. And I know that heart is as big as that body that I'm looking at right now. So I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. And let's stay in touch. I'm gonna hit you up. Yeah, I want to send you a copy of a couple of my books. I want you to read them. You mentioned Anthony Joshua. Anthony has, I think, an Instagram page, and he was reading my business book, and he put it on his page one day. So I'd love to get to meet him one day. Maybe when he comes over here, or I get over there. But I really enjoyed this, Joe, and I really appreciate you coming on with me. It was a privilege and honor to speak to you. I mean that. You're a great guy.
A lovely afternoon. It's been great talking to you. And when I talk about my life, I travel down memory lane, and that's a great thing that we have. We have memory lane to travel down. Sometimes the memories are hard, but if you don't experience hard times, you can't appreciate good times.
That's right.
Hard times, and I appreciate the good times now, having experienced the hard times. My life, I keep saying it can't get any better. My boxing career was took from me. I come back. My pub career was took from me. I've come back. I'm now in the film career. Please God, that's not took from me, because I don't think I'm going to get 4 bites of the apple.
Well, it couldn't happen to a better guy. I mean that, and you just keep being a light to the world, because you're just you make everybody joyous around you. So, thank you very much. You have a good rest of the evening, and let's stay in touch. And like I said, I hope I do get to meet you. And Mike will certainly see this. So will Tom. I'm going to be seeing them within the next couple of weeks, so they're going to enjoy it. I know for sure.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it, Michael. And good luck with all that you do. What you've had to endure in your life, the adversities that you've had to endure in your life. I hope that life is a bed of roses for you now. I hope that you're living and enjoying your family and everything else. Because that's what people ask me for my autograph. And when I sign my autograph, I always sign happiness, Joe Egan. You can have all the respect in the world and all the money in the world, but if you're not happy, what good is it? You've got to be happy.
You're right.
I wish all the happiness in the world, Michael. And I look forward to meeting you one day. I mean that. Thank you.
All right, my friend. God bless. Have a good rest of the night, and we will stay in touch. Take care now. All right. Bye-bye. What a great guy. I mean, I really enjoyed this sit down. Joe is he's just a unique guy, and Tyson says the same thing about him. Tom Patty, another good friend, a great storyteller, just a great guy, and it was a privilege and an honor for me to sit with him. Hope you all enjoyed it. MichaelFranzese.com. We're over 14,000 now in my crew, my community, everybody encouraging one another. We're putting a lot of good content in there. We're having the Zoom calls. It's going great. So I can tell you, join MichaelFranzese.com. You won't be disappointed. I promise you that, especially those of us coming out of this pandemic. You need encouragement. You need hope. You need good information. And that's what we're providing for all of you. So that's it for today. How do I always leave you, my friends? Be safe. Be healthy, God bless, and yes, I'll see you next time.